That's it. We are done. The 2019-20 season has come to an end, and in true Formula E style, we had a pretty unpredictable result to finish up. Stoffel Vandoorne takes his first victory in a Mercedes 1-2 to finish the season in a truly amazing P2 in the Drivers' Championship. This is the Inside Electric podcast, and I am your host, Katie Fairman. With me to chat through all the day's action and the reaction to that dominant Mercedes performance are Inside Electric co-founders Hazel Southwell, Peter DeYoung and Rob Watts. And we're also very pleased to be joined by a special guest, Niamh Lewis. Niamh, thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
No worries. Niamh is a sports journalist who covers motorsport for the BBC, as well as other sports for publications such as ESPN. It's her first time on the show this evening, so welcome, Niamh. If you are a first-time listener, we are an independent podcast covering Formula E and electric motorsport. You can find us on the socials at Inside Electric or online at inside-electric.com. Now, coming up in this episode, we will have all the reaction to Stoffel Vandoorne's first Formula E victory. We'll be reflecting on what has been a pretty exciting end to a very tough season, and we'll be taking a look at what next season might hold in store for the big names on the grid, and one or two who might now be saying goodbye to Formula E. Right, let's have a chat about Stoffel Vandoorne and Nick de Vries and that dominant Mercedes 1-2. Hazel, would you like to kick us off the podcast this episode?
Sure. It's quite a brilliant journey for Mercedes. Like, we don't think of Mercedes as like a challenger brand in motorsport because they've been so dominant in F1, and they, prior to them having their factory team again this century, they obviously had been supplying teams with very successful relationships and stuff. And so we don't think of them as like, oh, it's the underdogs Mercedes, like, but they did come into this season as a manufacturer in arguably their second year or like their 0.5 year, because they sort of stealth entered via HWA the previous year. But, you know, it's a very difficult championship to get into. It's a very difficult championship to get right. And it's completely unlike other series to be in Formula E. When we were at testing, they both them and Porsche were kind of like, oh, well, you know, the aim is that we want a podium at some point in the season. Stoffel knocks it out of the park by getting 2 in Riyadh, which one overachieving little monster. And then they obviously had no choice but to go for the win. Stoffel was sent. Because he's the reserve F1 driver, he was sent to Berlin over being there just in case one of their drivers tested positive for the Roni, which was why he didn't step into the racing point for Checo. Plagued by the round boy. I have been, so I'm allowed to say that.
Hazel's talking about COVID-19. If anyone's listening thinking, what is she on about? No.
But anyway. Like he was sent to Berlin to win the championship because they felt that their fortunes had turned round enough that they were in contention. You know, Stoffel had led the championship at one point, just after Santiago, and he's consistently got podiums, and then they had a really messy time in Berlin. So to then finally convert that to a 1-2 finish, like Mercedes 1-2 finish does not sound like a headline, but actually that represents the team having to put like a huge number of things together. And okay, a few things going wrong for other teams, but even so, like it's quite a good Formula E-ish sort of feel-good story, and Stoffel taking his first single-seated win since 2016 and stuff. You know, it's a good high for the season to end on.
Exactly. And Rob, if somebody, say, this is their first season watching or listening to this podcast or watching Formula E, they might think that Mercedes have come into this brand new this season, because this is really the first season that the Mercedes name has been associated with Formula E as a manufacturer, but there's actually more to it. Can you just explain a little bit how Mercedes and HWA sort of worked together last season?
I can, yes. Before I get into that, I just want to say two very quick points on this. First of all, boring. Mercedes 1-2. Same old, same old. Obviously joking.
Not in Formula E though.
No, but there'll be the naysayers who'll look at that and go, oh, well, there you go. I suppose that's Mercedes going to walk it now then. But I don't think they will. But secondly, I just want to give a shout out to previous Inside Electric podcast guest, Jess McFadden, who I think after the second race of this stretch, we talked about, we asked for some bold predictions for who might get a big result in the final few races, and she did actually say if Stoffel can get his qualifying together, I reckon he could possibly, I can't remember, did she say podium or win, but she did predict a big result. So
she said win, and I think she said him for second.
And also this morning I did say Stoffel for the win, even before he'd got pole, I think when he was in super pole. So I'm going to take that one as well. But anyway, sorry, your question was, yes, Mercedes have, they've done the hard yards. They haven't just rocked up this season. Are you okay? I'm not going to edit that out. That was a big sneeze.
Yeah, I tried to mute it, but it was too low.
Just didn't catch that one. I'm going to leave that one in.
Oh my god! I promise we're not this. Like, we're more professional than this. Probably.
Yeah, not tonight. Sorry. Whilst Hazel recovers from her spontaneous hay fever, Mercedes, yes, they have done the hard yards to get to this point. They haven't just rocked up this season and just hit the ground running instantly. They did enter last season. Technically, they entered last season with the Mercedes affiliated HWA team, and HWA are a German outfit that basically run a lot of their sports car entrants, and they were HWA last season, and they had Stoffel Vandoorne and Gary Paffett, who was the Mercedes DTM champion. And they had a really difficult time last season, to be honest. It was, and having just come straight into it from a really crappy time in F1, it looked as though, to begin with, it was going to be pretty much a continuation that for Vandoorne. He had a lot of bad luck, a lot of failures, and it only really sort of clicked to him at the sort of end of the European season, when I think it was a podium in Rome. And things really turned around after that. But then this season, they were a fully Mercedes badged factory team. They kept most of the staff on from HWA who worked on the cars last year. They made some key hires, got young Nick de Vries in, the F2 champion, to partner Stoffel. And as Hazel said, it was a great start, but I think that probably got a few people a bit too hyped up, and they had a real dip in the middle. But this is a really fantastic result, and it shows that there's enormous potential in that team. And I don't think they're going to do a Mercedes in F1 and walk the Formula E Championship next season. But I think this kind of shows that they're moving in the right direction now, and I suspect this won't be the last victory that we see from them.
Yeah, well, although the rest of the grid, for most of the race, it was quite a procession. We still didn't see a safety car this race, so that's 2 races in a row now where we haven't seen a safety car. I know what's going on with Formula E.
The boy is safety car proof.
It is actually.
We nearly had one with Oliver Rollins.
Oh yeah, arguably, maybe should have.
We were, they were. There was that big piece of bodywork that fell off Roland's car, and it was right on the racing line. Did someone retrieve
that, or did they just?
No, they just kept going.
They left it. Yeah.
They just left it. There was the big 22 there. I'm like, are you sure you want to leave that there? It's right where the
just off the racing line as well.
Yeah, just right there. And then they just kept going. And then, of course, Nelson Piquet pipes in and says, it's racing. It's fine. Which it was.
Well, let's talk about and dissect the race win and how Stoffel got that win, because although, like I was saying, it was a bit of a procession, the top four, especially the top three, there was a lot of chopping and changing of positions throughout this race. A lot of it was related to people taking attack mode and things like that. But Peter, let's talk about how Stoffel got that win, because although he started from pole position and he obviously finished in first, there was a lot more to his race than just like Ollie Rowland yesterday, just sailing away from pole position to that win.
Yeah, so when Vandoorne and De Vries got the sort of, when they were, well, actually it was Buemi who was also got the front row start right next to Vandoorne. And when we say, the front is kind of running away, it's more like maybe 2.1 seconds. That's considered a big gap in the world of Formula E. So Stoffel, much to his credit, on the start just got the jump on everyone and then just kept going, stayed out in front with the clean air and no drama in the back, because as we saw in the mid, when the mid pack was coming through, there was a lot of crunching and a lot of body work, contact and things like that. So Stoffel managed to stay out of the fray. And then what happened was Buemi was on a full attack on Stoffel. So Buemi wanted to take the race lead and was chasing Stoffel down. And so he was consuming quite a bit of energy in his Nissan Edams. Meanwhile, Nick De Vries in third was just watching everything unfold in front of him, and to his full credit, saving a crap ton of usable energy. His engineer, Albert Lau, who was Eduardo Mortara's engineer at Venturi for a number of years, instructed Nick to just keep going and keep saving energy, because it's going to come good at the end, towards the end of the race. And all three drivers in that front pack just took attack mode very, very early on. And we were just, when I was watching that race, I was like, oh, they're taking it really early. Maybe it's too soon, or maybe it's we're not sure why. But then, as we saw the race unfold, that was when things started to come good, because Stoffel had fan boost, and so did Nick De Vries, who also had fan boost. And at that point, De Vries had already accumulated a 2% usable energy advantage over Buemi and also Vandoorne as well. So I think if the race was a little bit longer, he might have challenged his teammate for the win there. But in a very, very audacious move, De Vries was able to overtake Buemi on that extra power that he had, and that's how they delivered the Mercedes 1-2. But just to wrap up with Stoffel, he basically just pretty much ran his own race and stayed out of the fray, and just clean racing, and that was what got him the win.
Yeah. And Hazel, did you want to make a quick point there?
Yeah, just a really quick thing, which it's interesting that De Vries' engineer is Mortara's former engineer at Venturi, because you see it less this season, maybe because the engineers moved. But when Mortara first came into Formula E, the thing that he was like phenomenal at, like really mind-blowing to the point that everyone was just like confused about how he was able to do it, was conserving energy compared to the drivers around him. Like he would routinely have 5 or 6% more than other drivers around him. So like I just wanted to say that was sort of an interesting thing, and it's obviously something that Lau has a really like strong understanding of, and can teach a driver new to the series, which Mortara also was when he first came in.
And normally it's when you see in a Formula E race, when a certain driver has a big percentage of usable energy and it's green on that little timing and scoring screen on the side, it usually means they're like P20 and they're like one lap down or something, and then they have like so much power left, and it's like, oh, let's say fastest lap. But in this case, it was very, very much a tactical play. It was a very, very key strategic play that ultimately, I think, got Mercedes the 1-2 in this case. So the strategy just played up beautifully in Mercedes' hands.
Yeah. Well, Niamh, I promise we haven't forgotten about you. We were just saying earlier, we have never had this many people on the podcast before, so it's going to take a little while for the sort of things to go around. But did you want to talk about Buemi today? Because as the others said before, he started P2, but he just couldn't keep De Vries away. And in the end, he finished P3, which is still a good result for him and the team. But it meant that while he was running in P2, Buemi had the chance to finish the championship in P2, which is obviously something he lost when he gave the position to De Vries.
Yeah, I think Mercedes just outsmarted them, to be honest. They played the perfect race, with Stoffel taking second in the championship as well. He, like Peter said, it was just out front, and Nick starting behind played the perfect supporting role. So I think Jack mentioned it on the commentary towards the end on the final lap. Would there be team orders from Mercedes to allow Stoffel to take second place in the championship and Nick to collect more points and stay behind? But yeah, De Vries made a very nice long lunge on Buemi towards the end. I think was it 7 minutes remaining of the race,
like
thereabouts.
yeah, something like that. It was just a really good move, and you just there wasn't anything he could have done to rescue it. So just not a good day for Buemi, to be honest. But he didn't do too badly, and he's only 1 point behind, so still something to take from that, even if it's not the 1 point, but something to take that it was still strong. So, but yeah, Mercedes were just too good.
Yeah. Well, guys, this is for all of you, but before we came to Berlin, did any of you think, and Rob is probably going to say that he guessed this because he guessed the results this morning, Mr. Clegg over there, but did any of you think that Stoffel Vandoorne was going to be finishing the championship in P2? I mean, this has been, I think it's the fourth race in a row where the person that was P9 in the championship then won the race and then went up to P2 in the standings. We saw it with Günther, we saw it with Verne, and then, yeah, a few other drivers. Sorry, you can tell it's like the last day of school.
It's hard to remember, isn't it, from one race to the next?
It is.
That's a remarkable statistic, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, honestly, I don't know what happened today, but that's a remarkable statistic. That 4 races in a row, the driver in P9 has won the race and shot. And we spoke about this last night. I think
it's only 3 races actually, but yeah.
Or was it 3? But yeah, we spoke about this. Yeah, we spoke about this last night about how coming into this race today, there was a big chunk of drivers who had a very realistic shot of getting that P2. But obviously yesterday that was shaken up even more by that disaster in qualifying. But then today we had a load of drivers at the back as well. So it's just really bizarre that we've had 2 races in a row with like so many big names right at the back, and it really played into certain other drivers' hands massively, gave them a huge opportunity to sort of seize big places in the final standings. And obviously Stoffel has done exactly that. But no, I'm not sure I would have seen that coming, I'll be honest. Although I saw it coming after I saw the pace in qualifying. I'm just going to reaffirm my Formula E Nostradamus position, but I didn't see it before that.
I think it's a really good thing, since the championship was done and dusted with 2 races to go. It leaves everybody with a bit more breathing room to send it, and having Verne and Da Costa and like you say, the big names towards the back. I think it just opened up the field, and everybody knows and everybody wants Stoffel to finally get a win, and it happened, and it's such a good end of the season for him. So, and then also obviously to take second in the championship is just a bonus, but to finally get that win for Mercedes as a team and for Stoffel is just fantastic. And I can't see Da Costa being too miffed at that race result, because there was nothing else to play for him. And I'm sure Jeb will be probably quite miffed at that with 1 point behind. But even so, I don't think he did anything quite spectacular in the race. So,
well, we can say for certain how miffed Jev is, because for the second race running, he did not turn up to the post-race press conference, and he's racked up, what is it, €3,000 worth fines now for basically sacking the whole thing off.
It's cool, fantastic. We now know how much he will pay to avoid us.
Well, I will say, look, Jev, I will take $500 to not ask you questions. Save yourself some money.
I was going to say, that should go straight to us. You should just pay us.
Listen, €3,000 to avoid us is a bargain. Okay,
I'll take that.
They should make it €30 million to avoid us.
We can have a new Patreon tier specifically for drivers.
Exactly.
The John Eric Verne tribute tier.
Yes.
$3,000 for us to leave you alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that kind of sums up Jev's current feeling on the situation. And I think he's pretty much ready to head straight back to his apartment now and hide away for a bit. I don't think... I don't think Jev is massively bothered whether he finishes second or third in the championship. I think as soon as he lost the championship, I think he checked out a little bit then. But
yeah, I agree completely. If he's not winning, then what's the point, I think?
Yeah. And I think probably, in all honesty, Seb Wayme probably isn't that arsed either about finishing sort of third or fourth. Once you've got a championship, it's kind of win or bust then, isn't it? But yeah, I just find it hilarious that he's like, what, another €1,500 fine? Yeah, well, fine, whatever.
Yep.
I don't mind.
This one was actually so the first time he got €1,000 fine, and then this time it's 2,000 because he didn't.
Oh, they just ranking.
Yes. So they keep rising. The idea is to act as a deterrent, but clearly it didn't. I mean,
where does the money actually go? I hope they're actually going to give it to like. I was going to say, I hope they're going to give it to UNICEF or something like that.
Yes. Well, those year-end parties don't pay for themselves.
End of season FIA party, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be fair, Verne did finish third, but I think when he saw that it was not possible for him to win the Drivers' Championship, he settled for the next best thing, which was to help his teammate do it, and then also to do it for the DS Tachita team, which he did, to his credit.
Yeah, totally in agreement there. Well, let's just quickly chat about Stoffel, because Rob, you asked a question in the post-race press conference, which is a similar kind of question that Antonio got when he won the championship, but it was basically asking if he was still interested in F1 if the opportunity came along. Obviously, we're very selfish and we want Stoffel and Antonio and everybody like that all to ourselves. But obviously, if these opportunities arise, then we can't not expect the drivers to show an interest in them. Were you there? Did you hear his answer, or were any of the other Inside Electric team members able to hear his view on it?
Yeah, I did hear what he said. So basically, the other day, this is I asked this question off the back of Hazel's question to Antonio the other day. So Hazel asked, in case you're not familiar with what the topic we're discussing. So Hazel asked Antonio the other day, now that you've won a championship, seeming as Jean-Eric Verne got an F1 offer following his championship, would you consider an F1 move now if one were to come your way? And he kind of said, no, it's not for me. It's for the young kids. It's not it's not real. It's not something that I'd consider now. I'm happy in Formula E. So I asked Stoffel today, you know, because we all know Stoffel's Formula One career ended pretty badly. If he would consider one, you know, now things are going well for him, very well for him in Formula E. Would he consider going back to Formula One if the opportunity came? He kind of sort of didn't say no outright, but he kind of sort of said, like, you know, it's one thing going back to Formula One if you're going to drive for Mercedes. Basically, if you're going to go back and win races, then probably yeah. But I think basically what he's saying, like, if it's a case of going back and arsing about in the midfield for 10th place, or coming to Formula E and winning races, I think Stoffel's comments were quite clear in that he sees his future now in Formula E, which is fantastic, because we want Formula E to have young, exciting drivers with bags of potential. We don't want it to be like it was sort of kind of seen a little bit in sort of season 1 and a bit in season 2, where it was like a bit of a retirement home. But no, I'm really encouraged by his comments, and I hope he sticks around, and I hope we get more drivers of his sort of kind come into Formula E and stick around.
Yeah,
I think for Stoffel, he's in the best position he possibly can be. He's associated with Mercedes-Benz, which is a manufacturer that has the number 1 team in Formula One and has now proven that it is capable of winning races in Formula E. And if you ask any racing driver what they love the most, it's winning races. But the second thing they love the most is seat time. So if you have a driver like Stoffel, and you're just going to bench him as and you're just going to bench him, and you're just going to bench him like a reserve driver for the rest of the season, they're just going to like languish and not do anything. So for Mercedes to be like, okay, here, go here, and then go do some races and just keep yourself fresh. I think he's in the best of both worlds. And, you know, if the call does come eventually, who knows?
Yeah, well, let's change the subject and talk about somebody else who did a really impressive performance today, and that is René Rast. Now, obviously, he got his maiden FE podium yesterday. Today, he put it in P3 in qualifying, and then scored his 4th place finish today. Niamh, have you been impressed, like the rest of us, at René Rast's performance, seeing as he's only started racing really full-time in Formula E in these last 6 races?
Yeah, it's really impressive. This season has been really odd, obviously, because of it's been split in half. But even if you look at, you know, who was winning the races and qualifying on pole and stuff in the first part of the season, it's completely different to what's happened in Berlin. So it might as well be 2 completely different seasons altogether. And for Rest to come in just straight into the car in Berlin and not have much practice time and not have much, you know, testing and all that time like every other driver's had, it's really impressive. And especially when you look at drivers that have been in Formula E for such a long time, you know, since the series begun, who are still at the back of the grid and still, you know, not producing very good results. And for him to come in and just, you know, be impressive straight away is just amazing. And with the seat that's available next year, it looks pretty clear as to where that's going to go. I think if I was, you know, Audi boss, you'd think you've already got your driver lined up for next year. So
yeah, Hazel, do you agree with that?
I don't think I am that impressed by Rast.
Knew this is coming. Rast is going to be season 7 Andre Lotterer for Hazel.
I know that there is an unstoppable Rast hype train, but I think what he's done is good. He's obviously put in...
He scored 29 points in 6 races.
He's obviously put in...
Give the guy a
podium.
Come on.
Yeah.
I'm not like...
And he hasn't skipped any media sessions as well. He's a good boy.
I'm not particularly kind of murking on him, but I don't think actually what he's done is that extraordinary in a lot of ways. So because he entered halfway through the season, he was automatically in Group 4, which in the couple of races where we've seen him get big performances and points, have both been on this track where there was that huge evolution. So like he was low down in the quali groups. He had the fastest car of anyone who was low down in the quali groups, like by far. Like you have to consider like Daniel Abt, whose car that used to be is in the Neo. Like of course he wasn't going to be able to do anything, or Sete Camara stepping into the Dragon, or even Alex Lynn in the Mahindra, who's got some really. I actually think Lynn has been more impressive.
Lynn has been very.
Oh, by far, yeah, absolutely, by far.
So and Lynn had much less track time and prep than Rast. So like, it's not that I'm kind of going like, oh, Rast is rubbish. Actually, it's all just the car. It's absolutely not. That's
the headline. That's the episode title, I think.
Yeah.
Not absolutely rubbish. There's the pull quote for the episode.
But yeah, I feel like relative to the other people who stepped into a seat, there needs to be a sort of like, not exactly brakes on the hype train, but just to sort of contextualize it, because it does look extraordinary, but also he is in a pretty damn good seat.
Yeah, his results on paper look astonishing, but then when you give it the context, like starting in Group 4 and what an advantage that is, yeah, it's a tricky one. But obviously there are so many people that are going to be fighting him for that Audi seat. So we will wait.
How much time has he spent in a Formula E car before? Has he spent any?
He had one.
He has, yeah.
Well, he did one race in season 2.
Okay.
He's also had close testing.
Yeah,
okay, so
he has tested the car before Berlin, but not tons. Not like you'd get a pre-season if you were coming in at the start.
He did the test at Lausitzring in July. Yeah.
Yes.
He's still got in the car and done better than what Daniel Abt's been doing. So
that's true. The one thing I would say, and Hazel's point about qualifying group is very valid, and that's definitely given him a big help in terms of his qualifying speed. But I just think in the last 2 races, his race performances have been very, very strong. And, we do see drivers who've come in and, they'll get a decent qualifying, but, they struggle with the energy management, and they struggle with the racing, and they struggle to combine being fast and preserving energy. They can do one or the other. But I feel like the last 2, yesterday, we spoke a lot about this last night. He had a good old DTM style wheel banging session with Andre Lotterer.
Yes.
Got himself a podium, and then today,
he Lotterer. That was
he
really
did Lotterer, and I thought today to sort of keep pace with that leading pack, even though he never really looked like he was in contention for a podium today. I just thought it was another very solid race, and I just think 29 points from 6 races. I think that
is impressive,
strong.
And it's one. I'd say it's one to watch. See how it gets.
Well, let's see. Let's wait and see. I think we'll find out.
Still here next year.
Up and coming young driver Rene Rast.
Yeah, who's what?
DTM
32?
champion Rene Rast.
Yeah. But
so from somebody who hasn't got a seat confirmed for season 7 to somebody who's actually going to be moving teams in season 7. Today was Sam Bird's final race for the Envision Virgin Racing team. Obviously, he's been there since his Formula E career started in season 1, so this is a huge move for him, and a pretty sad day because he's done a lot with Virgin Racing. We put a question out on Twitter earlier to share your favourite Sam Bird moment of him in the team, and we had so many different replies. It was it's going to be sad to see him go, but he's only moving down the pit lane to Jaguar. But for his final race, he started down in P14, but made up 9 places to finish P5. Peter, how much of a big loss will it be to Virgin to lose Sam?
Well, Sam's been with Virgin for so long. I mean, I think over at Virgin, they just consider him part of the furniture at this point. He's just been with them for such a long time, won so many races with them, came very close to winning the championship in season 4. I think it's gonna be a big loss for Envision Virgin, but at the same time, I think Sam is looking for a new challenge. And one of the things about that I've learned is that successful people never stay at one place for too long. So I think this move to Jaguar to partner Mitch Evans, it's going to make Jaguar have one of the most formidable driver pairings in the Formula E grid. And I can't wait to see what he does over there. Although I will say, with some of Jaguar's recent performance and recent results, I do wonder if Sam is having second thoughts about
luck,
it.
wouldn't it?
But the thing is, I really wish him the best, and I hope that he will find this challenge with a new team and getting the results that he wants. I hope this will be an exciting new chapter for him, and I hope he finds the motivation from that.
Yeah, Niamh, do you think that it was a good move for him to go to Jaguar, or do you think that he's going to be looking at the results Jaguar have had here in Berlin, which have been nothing short of shocking, really, and he's having second thoughts or cold feet?
I don't know, really. I was quite surprised at first when it was announced that he was going to Jaguar, but then actually, I think as partnering with Mitch Evans, they'll be good teammates, I think, and that'll be a good partnership with those two together. And also, it's the end of an era, like Peter said, at Virgin, and it's probably time to have a change. So, because he's been so close every season, and he's had so many good races every season, but still never won the championship. And it's all sort of, every year has been a different story as to why it's not worked out. So it's sort of like, it's a new challenge, of course, and hopefully you can bring something new to the team and the missing piece that they've not got. So I guess we just have to wait and see, but it's an exciting partnership, so I am very much looking forward to seeing what you can do in the team.
We've seen on social media just before recording this podcast that the Envision Virgin Racing team made sure to give Sam a good send-off. Yeah.
Right there. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it.
I'll edit it into the video.
Yeah. So for anyone listening to this, the team have tied. It looks like they've tied Sam up on like a pallet.
It was one of those tire trolleys, and then just wrapped him with race tape.
Something.
Yeah, they covered him with some kind of powder, and it says "Delivered to Jaguar Racing with love from Envision Virgin Racing," as you normally would when a driver decides to betray you as the view of Envision Virgin. But
I think Renault did the same thing with Sainz to McLaren, didn't they?
They did.
Yes, I think they did.
They
did.
There's a long tradition of delivering your driver
Correct.
filthy and weird looking to their next team.
Yes,
and like I
believe a lot of that is in Mark Priestley's book, who was your guest yesterday.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mark's got some very interesting stories.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, like, Sam at DS, like the last 2 years have been really rough for him. And like had some incredibly difficult periods. Like I've seen Sam, well, actually Peter, you were there as well, like Mexico this year, he had a good race result just taken away and by an incident. And like Sam Bird is a very robust driver mentally, and to see him like crouching down with his head in his hands in media pen, knowing that we're all looking at him and there's photographers, because he just didn't, that was just what he was feeling, was pretty brutal. So I can definitely see why, regardless of anything, he just wants a different start, and to break what feels like a run of like just lost chances and stuff. He also isn't an Audi driver, and Envision Virgin now are an Audi team, so it's all a bit complicated. But I just wanted to talk about his season 4. Like if we're talking about Sam at Virgin, then even if you don't necessarily sort of see the results, up until season 4, he'd always been in contention on the final race for the championship, even if it was outside contention. And he was the last driver that could challenge Vandoorne going into the final New York races that season. And he knew that actually the car wasn't going to be capable of it. It just wasn't there. So he started that weekend knowing he'd lost the championship, but could still kind of like keep second, and in the end he got third. But that car was the season 3 car. There was not a single update to that car because Virgin and DS had like violently parted ways at the end of season 3.
Yes.
So he drove a season 3 car to be the last title contender in season 4. And I think that shows like the kind of driver that Sam is, which is somebody who can do a huge amount with whatever you give him. And that's really important to Jaguar. You know, there's a lot of problems for JLR, the wider group. Like we know that they are in financial difficulty. The team is going to be being asked to run with less and do more, and to justify their existence by delivering results. And so, like, yeah, I think Sam is unquestionably. I think he's going to enjoy it because it will be a challenge where he can really get his teeth into it and where they appreciate that. And I don't think he's really enjoyed being in a customer team. And B, I think like he is such a solid choice for somebody who can do that.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good point about the Jaguars' financial situation, and you know, electric cars and the kind of future of, especially in the UK, of like, you know, a lot of road cars moving to electric and stuff. And yeah, you're right, they do have to justify their existence, and they are a huge influence on the electric car market. So they really need to get it right in Formula E and kind of show off what they're doing, you know, back in the factory in terms of development and stuff. So I just hope that they can really, you know, kind of give themselves some good press and good luck, I think, after they've had like such a bad time of it with the pandemic and stuff. So, you know, good times are on the horizon, hopefully, for Jaguar. And with Sam joining the team, you can only hope for that for the next year. So
yeah, well, hopefully in axing the iPace E trophy, they'll be able to give all of their time and attention now to their Formula E entry. But let's have a chat about somebody who also had another good drive today. From P10 to P6, after being very clever with his energy usage, Lucas Di Grassi had a good result, but Rob has actually come up with a stat here which shocks me. This is the first time Lucas Di Grassi has finished outside the top 3 in the championship standings. So, yeah, quite a stat and quite a shock, really. Rob, is that something that you thought was going to be quite obvious as we approach this year, or is that quite a surprise?
I don't know. I mean, I think at the start of the season, we kind of did get a feeling that this wasn't going to be. It didn't look like it was going to be a necessarily like a title challenging year for Di Grassi. Hang on, as well as that start, I'm just thinking, Lucas didn't win a race this year, did he?
No,
he
no.
didn't.
So Sam is the only driver who's
So that means that Sam previously shared that record with Lucas, to the only driver to have won a race. So that means
Every
Sam
season.
stands
is now
alone
the only
now.
driver. Yeah,
he stands alone as the only driver to have won a race in each season, but he still hasn't got a championship, which is mad. But yeah, I think
it's also the first time Audi Sport, or the team that is Audi, have finished outside the top 3.
Yeah, and in all, it's been a very disappointing season for Audi, I think you have to say. So I don't know. There'll be a lot of work to do in the off season now for Adam McNish and that team to try and move that team forward, because I know Audi, the company of Audi won't be happy with where did Audi finish in the end? I haven't got the.
They finished
sixth. I mean, they won't be happy with that. I mean, they would have expected to have been finishing top 2, top 3 in the championship. So
the only good thing about Di Grassi today was that movie made on France.
Oh yeah,
Fifth,
Audi
was it? Or for 6th?
It was it was for 6th. Yeah,
6th. Yeah. It sold in the dummy and then went on the inside, and it was just worked perfectly. So it's one good thing from the whole race, but
that was.
I mean, he did come from the back. He had quite a classic sort of Lucas side up the field, and like Degrassi, as a rule, is, you know, he's only had 3 career pole positions, but he's one of the, you know, he's been on 32 Formula E podiums, which is a lot. So, you know, he is pretty good at making up those places. And although he was ahead of the group that were in Group 1, he was basically the next last person that wasn't in a Neo. So yeah, I think he did do well today, and actually probably was quite happy with his drive in a way that I don't think he has been for the majority of the Berlin races. It was relatively clean. He ended up decently in the points, etc. But like, yeah, it's not been a classic Degrassi year. I blame firing Abd.
Yeah.
Well, that has definitely destabilized the Audi team. It was a very, very sudden dismissal of Daniel Abt, and Lucas is obviously very, very fond of him and has a lot of input into, you know, who his teammate is. But I do remember, you know, yesterday, after, you know, Degrassi's disastrous day yesterday, and the only saving grace that he said was that he was in Group 2 qualifying, and that he always has a pretty decent result in Group 2 when he qualifies in Group 2. And, you know, he finished in sixth place today. So that was exactly what Degrassi said was exactly what happened. I think that was probably the best that he could have hoped for, given where he started.
Yeah, well, going from P10 to P6 is impressive. But let's just talk about Jean-Eric Vergne, who went from P21 to P7. I mean, that's arguably one of the drives of the season. Obviously, he was disappointed massively at the fact that he couldn't cement that second place finish in the driver's standing. We mentioned earlier, you know, he failed to turn up to the post-race press conference, so he's clearly pretty miffed. But still, hopefully Vergne will be able to have a look at that drive he did today, and that will be a good sort of lasting memory of the season. Do you agree with that, Hazel?
I think Jeb tomorrow will be in the simulator or testing or whatever for whatever's coming next. I think as far as Jeb is concerned, the season is dead and gone, and I think he is genuinely happy for Antonio, but he said before over the last few days, like, he really struggles with losing. And it's something that he really, really struggled with for the first few years he was in Formula E, and that he had to sort of like get control of in order to. Sorry, an enormous storm has just arrived at my house, which is brilliant. But also,
I heard it this afternoon, so it's reached you now.
Yeah. I'm delighted because it might finally get below 30 degrees. So I think Jeb is somebody who really, really struggles with losing. And when he was first in Formula E, he'd do things like when he first arrived at Punta del Este for his very first race in Formula E, third ever Formula E race. He got pole position, and then he crashed out of the race. His car failed. He ran out of energy. And he took it really hard. And every time he'd get something like that, like a pole position, like a podium, then if he didn't immediately go on to something better, if it didn't keep happening, then he couldn't take it. And you'd see this sort of like jagged roller coaster of like extreme highs and appalling nadirs for Jeb. And like the last 2 seasons where he's taken the championship have been about him being able to manage that, and the recovery towards the end of season 3 when he took his first win in the final race in Montreal, which no one gave a crap about Jeb winning his first race because everyone was preoccupied with the Degrassi Buemi fight. But he, in order to get to there, he had to like get a balance on that and be able to deal with his own disappointment without spiraling. And I think this season has been a bit of a sort of re-humbling experience that he doesn't necessarily have a lid on that, and that extreme darkness that dogged him for a long time, and it's something that affects him very severely, is not something that he's sort of walked away from. It's something that he needs to continue the management process of, and to continue to grow as a driver in that.
Yeah, well, let's move on to Alex Lynn, who has been super impressive all of Berlin, and is somebody that we've sort of glossed over in these podcasts because there's just been so much to talk about. But let's actually dedicate some time in this podcast to just talk about what a stellar job he has done in that Mahindra. He has scored, he ends the season with 16 points, which is just 3 points fewer than Jerome D'Ambrosio, his teammate, who's raced the whole season. I mean, that is impressive. Peter, do you want to talk a little bit more about these 6 races that Alex Lynn has done? And do you think he's done enough to sort of get himself the season 7 Mahindra seat?
So when Alex Lynn signed up with Mahindra, or rather Dilbagh Gill decided to pick Alex Lynn for the final 6 races, he got 1 day of testing, and that was it. So 1 day of testing in Mahindra with a brand new team, and here he was. And Alex has had experience in Formula E. He was he partnered Sam Bird at Virgin. He partnered Mitch Evans at Jaguar, and but it just never, like, for Lynn, it just never stuck. It just never really worked out. And then he came here in Berlin and just basically blitzed it. Like, he was so fast. He got up to speed literally so quickly. He was a regular in Superpole qualifying, and he managed to, it was the Mahindra does struggle with efficiency during the race. But over the course of these 6 races, he's gotten so much better with it. And today, that showed with a very, very strong 8th place finish for Alex. So I definitely think that with this sort of, we talk about Formula E being, we've got to scale this learning curve. I think Alex Lynn has done that in spades, and he definitely deserves a place in the championship, wherever that may be, for next season and beyond.
Yeah, no, we're all massive Alex Lynn supporters here. He's such a nice lad and super quick behind the wheel of a Formula E car.
And very thankful as well, I might add. When he got that really, really good performance, he says, "Thank you, Dilbagh," over the radio. So that was really, really sweet of him.
He's a very nice guy, Alex. Yeah.
Well, let's have a quick skim over other drivers that had some highs and some lows in today's race. So Robin Freintz, he had a DNF. He was running in P5 for most of the race before a puncture from the Degrassi contact. Peter, you seem very stressed by this.
Well, it was all like Audi. It was like Audi customer team versus Audi manufacturer team. And it was just like, it was very awkward in the garages, probably. I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty awkward between Alan and Sylvain after that. But yeah, Robin did really, because he made it into Superpole and he had a really, really good starting position. And then, to have that go away, it's just like, just feel a little bit.
To Freintz, though, he is one of the drivers who's massively turned his season around in Berlin, because he really wasn't having a brilliant time up to the end of Marrakesh. He'd had a very messy season. He'd been out-qualified in all of the first 5 races by Bird. He'd had a couple of incidents. He'd only scored 10 points, I think. And it really was shaping up to be a very disappointing season. But I think he's one of the top 5 or 6 point scorers from the Berlin races, and he's had some really good performance. And it's a shame he didn't get to sort of see that race through today, because it could have been another solid bunch of points for him.
Yeah.
You know why he turned his season around? It's Antonio. Because he keeps seeing Antonio winning all the races and getting all the adulation and all of that. And Robin is like, oh, I want some of that. It was just like, it must be Antonio. The Robtonio will not be denied.
No.
No.
Other drivers that had good races today, Mitch Evans went from P22 to P11, so just missing out on points. But this whole Berlin season finale has been an absolute nightmare for Mitch Evans. I personally thought that he might be the one to take the championship this year, and it's just completely fallen out of his grasp. He finished the championship this year 7th in the standings. He was 2nd in the standings when we came to Berlin. So yeah, just a terrible time for Mitch. Da Costa, your Formula E champion this year, he went from P19 to P9, so he gained 10 places in the race today. Günther actually finished the race today. The previous 2 rounds, he had a real bad luck and retired early. He went from P18 to P12, so made up 6 places and was in the points before last lap contact with Robin Freintz. Andre Lotterer, we're at that time again, Hazel. He went from P10
Never heard of him.
to P14. But Hazel actually got up while I was talking through those things to get her little notebook.
I did. So I took some notes on good things I could say about Andre Lotterer this race.
We really need a jingle for the next season.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
This part. I
I
might try and get someone to write something. If
yeah.
anyone's listening and they know of like a musician or something.
I
need it to be like
I can commission this one.
I was going to say we need it to be like Andrew Benson's long room corner in practice.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly,
Formula
yeah.
One.
Yes.
Something like that.
Hazel Southwell's Andre Lotterer corner or something.
Yeah, and I know that people look forward to this segment. So Andre, of course, was in Group 1 of qualifying.
Yes.
Because he started this race in the top 6 of the championship. He ended this race 8th in the championship, which is obviously a little bit disappointing for him. But he was mid Group 1, so that's good. He was only beaten by Günther and Da Costa, both race winners. And he beat Jev, Evans and Roland. So fair, as these things go. He then, in the race, did not get in Evans' way.
There we go.
And for that reason, he's driver of the day.
But I mean, seriously, he had a very unnotable race.
Well, you say unnotable. He went from P20 to P14.
Yes, but that
okay.
was,
I mean, it
that
wasn't.
was by overtaking cars that were substantially slow, and also
okay.
you have to remember the late retirement of 2 cars, in that Günther and Freintz were taken out of contention. So really, it was
Very true. Very true.
Well, Hazel, I raised my glass to the final. Hazel says something nice about Andre Lotterer of the season. Cheers, guys. And let's quickly talk about Sete Camara, who was running top 10 for much of the first half of the race. He's also had a really promising Formula E debut here in Berlin. We know how much of a, what's the polite way of putting this, a difficult car the Dragon is to drive. But he's really impressed a lot of people. Niamh, do you want to talk a little bit about his sort of time that he's had at Dragon over these last 6 races?
I'm going to be honest, I don't actually know much about him. So somebody else will be able to tell the listeners a lot more than I can.
Yeah, sure. Hazel, do you want to take it?
So Sete Camara has been fairly strong in F2. He was Lando Norris's teammate in his year in F2 and was actually pretty competitive with him. So like, you know, he's a Carlin boy. There's quite a few of them who've ended up in Formula E. You know, he's a strong driver. It's never quite come together for him to put together a championship in the sort of higher ranks of the junior series. And he's had a bit of a sort of like sporadic career. But he came to test the Dragon in
Ooh, if you can hear that, that was thunder from Hazel South
like
Wales.
I'm not scared of storms, but that was very proximate.
Yes.
Quite dramatic. Anyway, yeah.
It's the ghost of Andre Lotterer.
Ghost
Ooh,
of Punta del Este season 4 there.
pretty much. Yeah.
But hopefully I won't have
Set a
that
camera.
bad a
Set a
yeah,
camera.
set a camera. Like, he's a solid driver. He did the test for Dragon in Marrakesh. So he came into this series of races as the driver who had most recently participated in an official Formula E session. I mean, the thing is, you can't really expect anyone to do very well in a Dragon, because like, the powertrain's dog awful, the team's got operational issues. The only team with a more dog awful powertrain than them is Neo, or 333 Lesheng, because they've got an even older Dragon powertrain. So
Can I just say something quickly on Set a Camera? He's done two things in these 6 races that have impressed me, and there are 2 things that no other driver in a Dragon has done this season. One, he has qualified in the top 10. No Dragon driver has done that.
Did he qualify 7th? I think.
9th, I think.
9th. Okay. All right.
The other day, yeah. No Dragon driver had done that this season. And when we were before Berlin, when we were really digging deep into stats, and we were looking at driver performances. I discovered that no Dragon driver had spent a single lap racing in the top 10 all season coming into Berlin, which is remarkable. And he's had a couple of races now where he's been sort of flirting with the points, and he spent most of that first half of the race today running in top 10. So I think, unfortunately for him, it looks like he might have secured himself a Dragon seat for next season. So, yeah.
it's the tiger you can't get off.
Yes, Sergio definitely showed a lot of promise in what can only be described as a suboptimal Dragon car. So he reminded me of actually Max Günther last season, when he basically outdrove. I remember just on the because they were having, Dragon were having some kind of revolving door with their drivers, and I remember running into him and asking him, like, "Are you sure you're going to have a seat at Dragon for the upcoming races?" And he was like, "Yep, absolutely sure, absolutely." And sure enough, he was in the car and he outdrove that thing for the rest of the season. So and Sergio's performance in these 6 races reminded me a lot of that. So it does put him in good stead for a seat if he decides to pursue it in Formula E for next season.
Yeah.
He also gives really good Mitch Evans style answers to questions. So he was in a press conference and he was asked something
He
like,
does, actually,
would you like to be in Formula E in the future? And a lot of drivers might be like, well, I've had a very interesting introduction to the championship. It's been a really good chance, and I'll see what happens in the future. And he was like, first of all, let me thank the person by name for the question, and then I'm gonna speak for like literally 3.5 minutes, which most answers in the press conferences at the minute have been like
30 seconds if you're lucky.
Raikkonen style brevity. And yeah, just great. So I'm all here for Sergio.
Because it was Toby, our friend Toby from
Toby 2 from E4D.
Yes.
Yeah, little Toby. And Sergio said, "Can I ask before I start? Can I ask who that question was from?" And Sam Mallinson was like scrambling around with his paper. Who answered? Yeah, it was. He's good quality actually in interviews.
We should have him on the podcast. That would be fun.
Yeah. Let's try and do that.
Okay.
We'll have to extend the running time a bit, but
yeah.
Okay. Well, from fresh blood to some drivers that are probably going to be saying their final goodbyes. One driver who was announced to be departing their current team as soon as the checkered flag was waved, which is
maybe
just
even a few moments before.
Right on the last. It was right on the last lap. It was like +1 lap, and that was when they dropped it.
literally
Yeah.
he just
They must have just gone, right, we're off now. That's
Yeah.
it. We're
No,
packing
I
up.
think it was
Send them
scheduled.
emails.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you
it
go.
must have been.
Yeah.
but that
Anyway, Katie.
sorry, that's Felipe Massa that we are talking about. Obviously ex-F1, a big name for the sport. He has said that he is departing the Venturi team. Don't yet know if that is a move decided by Massa or if that's a move decided by the team, but his time in Formula E hasn't exactly been a success story. He's made it into Superpole 5 times, and his best result, he got a podium in Monaco last year, which is obviously Venturi's home race. So that was good. But apart from that, it's just been a bit of a disappointment. Would you say that's a fair analysis?
Yes.
He's sort of just become part of the furniture, really, hasn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally.
That's probably
Yeah.
not what he intended to do, though, is it? But
But not in the
unfortunately.
not in the same way as like Sam Bird at Virgin, as in like
No.
Massa has just kind of
He
faded
just
into
slipped
the
into the
background.
midfield and just
and then just
stayed there.
disappears.
Yeah.
I just
Exactly.
want to add quickly on Felipe Massa. Hazel and I spoke with Susie the other day, earlier this week, and it was like a group media call for journalists over Zoom, and I actually I did ask Susie about the fact that Ada Mortaro scored most of the points this year, and could we possibly see a driver change for next season? And reading back her quotes, she did kind of maybe hint a little bit that this might be coming, because she said to us that it's a decision that we're going to have to sit down and discuss and see whether Felipe wants to continue in Formula E. And she said that we've got enormous respect for him and what he's contributed to the team, but we're going to need to make a decision on that very soon, because we need to start preparing. So it looks like the wheels had already been set in motion, and judging by Susie's comments, it might suggest that Felipe himself has decided to step down. As much as maybe step down before he was chopped. But I think Felipe maybe has kind of seen the writing on the wall, because his performances haven't been that great this season.
Sorry, Hazel, go ahead.
I think Felipe joined a season too late. So I don't think that he was meant to retire from F1 and was slated actually to go to Jaguar.
He was
before Nelson Piquet Jr. did,
and I think that was pretty much a done deal, wasn't it? That
it was, and then he was recalled to Williams because they had the Martini sponsorship, and because they lost Bottas, they needed a driver who was over 25, so that they could promote the Martini sponsorship, because their other driver was then teenage Stroll. Yeah. So they asked him back, and he sort of said, like, sorry for screwing up to Jaguar, and they kind of negotiated things, and did a test for them, but kind of things went wherever, and they got Nelson Piquet Jr. in his stead. But I reckon if Massa had come in the era of car swaps, because he's so tiny compared, because a lot of the taller drivers really struggle with car swaps, especially once they remove the time limit on them. I honestly think he could have really enjoyed that. And there were drivers, even quite tall drivers like Sarrazin, who kept going well into their 40s in the first era of Formula E. I suspect we won't see that now, simply because there are so many drivers trying to get in. And not everyone's as good as Heidfeld or Sarrazin. But yeah, I think he could have had really good fun in a Gen 1 car, and could have probably actually sort of rediscovered a bit of a sort of like love for racing that perhaps declining returns in Formula One had been sort of steadily beaten out of him. And I think the Gen 2 stepping in was probably just too big an ask.
Also, that was before Formula E was going to have the minimum drive, like the minimum weight with 80 kilos. So Felipe Massa, who is probably one of the lightest drivers on the Formula E grid, would have been an enormous. Yeah, it would be an enormous advantage to have Felipe, as it was in the case with Williams. So basically what we're trying to say is that Nico Rosberg, this is all your fault. So if you hadn't decided and all the shuffled, we could have had Felipe, but you know,
is Felipe's career over?
Exactly. I just want to add one thing, which is that you know, we see all the fan boost and everything, and Stoffel and Daniel Abt, they all get the fan boost, but at a racetrack, Felipe Massa is without question the most popular driver from the fans. Everybody, when Hazel and I were at Mexico City, everyone, all the fans were there by the media pen trying to find which driver it was, and the most number of drivers was outside the Venturi garage, and unfortunately they're not for Eduardo Mortara. They were all for Felipe. Like, everyone was just looking for Felipe. So they're really they're really big fans of Massa out there. So we don't know what this means for Massa for the future, but it's going to be sad to not have him in the Formula E paddock if that happens.
That's really interesting that he doesn't get fan boost. I suppose that's the difference between fans that are online and fans that are actually there.
Yeah.
My favourite Massa moment was last year in the penultimate race in New York, when he caused that crash between Jev. Jev was on the way to winning the championship.
Overtake of the year.
I've watched that clip, honestly, like thousands of times, and it just doesn't get old. So
I think we heard it in the media centre. I was like,
yeah, we did. We literally did, didn't we? It was like
Massa,
a crunch.
Jev.
Yeah, it was.
Was it Wehrlein as well? Wehrlein.
It was D'Ambrosio.
That was it. Yeah.
If you've ever been
Honestly,
witness to a car crash in real life and you hear the sound, when we were in the media centre, it was literally, you could hear in the distance what sounded like, you know, when someone rear ends someone on the motorway or something like that. It just the crunch. It was
expensive.
It was it's a difficult thing to say that when you enjoy a crash, like nobody was hurt or anything. So it's we can laugh about it, but just to watch it, it's just one of them where you're watching, and then next thing there's just a D'Ambrosio's driving over the top of them, and it's like, this is Formula E. Yeah. This is why we watch it, for this.
Well, there are a few other drivers that still haven't got anything confirmed. Neil Jarni, which I have to apologise. Yes, I kept calling him Neil Yarni, and I got a smack on the back of my wrist from the guys, but it's Neil Jarni.
It's actually pronounced. It's actually pronounced Laurel, Katie. It's Neil Laurel.
But also the future of Daniel Abt has not been confirmed, Alexander Sims, Jerome D'Ambrosio, all of which I think is probably content for a podcast another time, talking about possible moves, as I am conscious of the time. But yeah, let's just have a final recap over the championship standings. So as you already know, Antonio Felix da Costa has already wrapped up the Drivers' Championship. He did that at the weekend with an amazing 158 points to his name. Stoffel Vandoorne cemented second place in the standings with 87 points thanks to his win today. Jean-Eric Vergne finished in third, with Sebastian Buemi and Oliver Rowland finalising the top five. Diaz Techeetah won the Constructors' Championship, followed by Nissan Edams in second, Mercedes EQ in third in their debut year, amazing stuff from them, and Vision Version in Racing in fourth, and BMW Andretti in fifth. So there's many questions about what the future will hold for Formula E next year. I think that's, again, something else we need to discuss in a podcast at another time as to what the championship could look like in the future. But many thanks to Niamh and also to Hazel, Peter and Rob for their time in this episode. Niamh,
Thank you too.
Thank you,
Yes,
Katie.
and yes, thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you, Katie.
And also, can I also just say one more thing before we do wrap this up? Thank you to everyone who has listened to these podcasts over the last week and a half, because it has been an enormous slog to get these all done and released within hours of the race sometimes. And also a huge thank you to our patrons who've supported us this season, because this is today marks the end of our first season as Inside Electric covering Formula E. So, and we've enjoyed every moment of it, and we thank everyone who's listened to the podcast and has read our stuff and shared it and supported us. So a huge thank you.
You guys deserve a round of applause. Does that work on a podcast?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. We can insert some special
Thank
sound
you.
effects for that, right, Rob?
Yeah, I'll drop something in.
Yeah.
We're not editing this.
Something from the Oscars. That'd be nice. Yeah.
Niamh can be our hype man for future episodes.
Well, Niamh, before we let you go, and especially after that lovely round of applause, do you want to let people know where they can find you on social media and where's best to find your work?
Twitter, probably. So I am at Lewis_Niamh, and that is NIAMH. And then Instagram, which is mostly just cats and dogs and beaches. Athlete Journo. So
Quality content.
Yeah.
If you want beaches and animals, follow me.
You should go.
Sounds good.
Well, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And please also do consider leaving us a review whilst you're there, as it really does help other Formula E fans discover our content. Inside Electric is an independently run website, so please consider backing us on Patreon, and in return you will get some exclusive benefits, including additional bonus content, including a monthly Ask Us Anything video, early access to future podcast episodes, plus access to the Inside Electric Discord chat. We'll be back soon, I guess. It's going to be weird not having these podcasts happening every night, but it's been a hectic couple of weeks covering the season finale. So we might just treat ourselves to a few days off. I have been your host, Katie Fairman, and this has been the Inside Electric podcast. Thanks again for all your support over the season finale. It really does. It's just so appreciated. But we'll catch you again with another episode very soon.
We do the Brady Bunch wave for you.